Hello there, my name is Ed Romero and this is the Out of Office Chat where I talk about life outside the office. And today, I want to chat about getting a red notice, attending a cinematic event of a generation, and just catching up with life. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's been about a month since I talked to y'all. It's been a busy time, but again, thank you for bearing with me and listening to this episode. So the first segment I want to talk about is a book called Red Notice by Bill Browder. Now, Bill Browder, this book chronicles Bill's progression through high finance in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. Now, when I picked it up, I was like, I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be good or not. But I was pleasantly surprised with how it read. It read like a memoir. It read like a thriller. It read like an espionage novel. It was really, really good. So now I won't cover off all the minutia of it, but I do want to walk you through the general outline and some of the cool turns it takes. So Bill came from a family of, I guess, left-wingers, communists. So Bill's grandfather, Earl Browder, he adopted communism in the late 30s and began to not just, he began to share the ideology, so much so that he ran for president twice under the communist ballot. Now this left a sour taste in the capitalists' mouths. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with this. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to lie. So the differences between communism and capitalism. So communism, from what I understand it, wealth is distributed by the government. Capitalism allows individuals to accrue wealth. That is as far as I understand it. I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure there's a lot more philosophical nuances. But I think it's important to state that from an early age, Bill was exposed to, Bill was really pushed for academia. His grandparents pushed for it, and then his parents pushed for it after their family was basically ousted by the various administrations during the communist witch hunts of the Cold War. Now, Bill was seen a little bit as a black sheep, and he thought to himself, okay, what can I do to be a rebel in my family, the family of communists? And the first thing he thought of, well, I can be a capitalist, direct polar opposite of a communist. So the book basically follows his journey into capitalism and identifying opportunities as his career progressed. Now, his career began after he graduated from Stanford, after he graduated from business school. His heart was calling him on to go to Eastern Europe. And he did find himself in Eastern Europe during his time with, I think it was a Boston Consulting Group. During that time, he was in Poland trying to provide recommendations on a Polish bus company on how they can survive their basically dismal financial outlooks. Now, he was trying to put on a happy face, be a little bit more optimistic, and he provided three recommendations, all of which his supervisor plainly said, no, are you stupid? The only way they can survive is by firing their entire workforce, which is very sad because the entire town where the bus company is located is primarily its economy is dependent on the bus company. Regardless, Bill had to present the unfortunate bleak news that the company has to shut down if they want to survive to executives and the folks that paid for the recommendation. So he didn't enjoy that at all. But during that time, what he through a translator he had hired, he discovered that there was some stock in a different Polish company that was seriously undervalued, and he invested $2,000 in that stock. So Bill says that over a year, that stock doubled. Over another year, that stock doubled again. And over a last year, it doubled again. So he got this rush where, oh my gosh, there's a lot of opportunity with these type of financial assets. So what ended up happening was Bill went from one company agency to another, and they ended up at a group called Salomon Brothers. And at Salomon Brothers, it was very cutthroat, where individuals didn't really want to share any of the financial opportunities, benefits of the projects that we're working on. And what that basically means is trying to make recommendations, buy assets, buy investments, or invest in certain locations, and basically receive a return on all of them. His heart was still calling him to Eastern Europe, to Poland or something similar. And he noticed that nobody was investing into Russia. So he began to research into Russia. I think he even bought a plane ticket to Russia to understand kind of their culture to some degree. What he discovered was during the fall of the USSR, as the government was transitioning from communism to a more open economy, the government wanted their citizens to invest into various companies. But remember, the companies were owned by the government. So they distributed vouchers that allowed the population of Russia to buy up specific assets and properties or investments across the economy. Now, Bill discovered that the total value of these these vouchers was upwards of $3 billion. $3 billion is what the vouchers were worth. However, the Russian economy, he calculated, was worth $10 billion. So that means basically you can buy up various investment vehicles, assets, whatever you like to call them, stocks, shares, worth for $3 billion, but worth $10 billion. So he had to go ahead and push for various executives to begin buying up $25 million worth of these vouchers. And as word got around that the Russian economy, it was like the next gold mine, people kept buying up vouchers and investment opportunities and shares and stocks and blah, 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 and such. So that $25 million that Bill had used for the vouchers ended up being worth $125 million after a year or so. So it really thrusted Bill into the limelight in Salomon Brothers, and folks who used to kind of brush him off were approaching him like, hey, let's do lunch. Hey, you know what? I have a client that's interested in Russian property. Let's chat. Now, he decided to go ahead and found his own investment firm called Hermitage Capital. So from there on out, he began to identify other opportunities on where to invest. I don't know a lot about the Russian economy. I don't know, but as he began to invest in various companies and opportunities, he'd identified that the oligarchs had a massive hold on various parts of the economy. Now, if you're not familiar with the oligarchs, let me learn you something. From my understanding, an oligarch is an individual or an entity that controls a specific industry in a market. So in Russia, apparently there are a couple of oligarchs. Again, this is not so much a rant or an overview of the current economic or political state of Russia, but this is just really from what I picked up and I identified or I understood from the book. So with that, Bill was beginning to kind of rub on everyone's, get on everyone's bad side. He was not leaving the oligarchs very happy. At a certain point, he invested tremendously into an oil company called Sidanku, a big oil company in Western Siberia. He noticed that there wasn't a ton of data on the company, but he did notice that the company was trading a barrel of oil was going for 15 cents when the market price was going for $20. It was a massive undervaluation, but there was really no data around Sidanku. He approached one executive officer and another, and he really couldn't understand, nor could he put a lot of credence into this undervaluation up until one of his former classmates from Stanford mailed him a trade magazine with all the cool stats. So at that point, he was able to solidify this company is seriously undervalued. So he went in and purchased up 10% of the company, which is, it's pretty big. His fund, I think, bought, 1.2%? Yeah. No. Forgive me. His fund bought 1.2% of the company for $11 million. Now, what ended up happening was that the CEO of Sadanku, Vladimir Potanin, he didn't like the fact that an American was getting rich off of a prospering Russian company. So he decided to do a share split. So a share split, from what I understand, is when the stock shares of a company, they grow the number of those that are out there. They can double, triple, quadruple, what have you. So let's say Sadanku has 100 shares and Bill buys one share at $1,000, right? And so Sadanku decides, let's double the amount of shares that are out there to 200. But what Vladimir did was he restricted Bill's organization from purchasing any of the new shares. So they just kept it at 1. So instead of owning 1% of 100 shares, he now owned, a 0.5% of 200. Now, that became a huge deal because his firm, his clients had invested a portion of their funds into the Sadanku. Oh, and this is where things kind of go off the rails. Vladimir Potanin, not to be confused with the current president, Vladimir Putin. This Vladimir Potanin, he basically outright said that, yeah, no, we understand the impact it would have to Bill and his clients and his customers, but he should have known better investing into Russia. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but this kind of gall in your face, we're gonna do it in a good old fashioned Russian style. And there is a quote out there, because remember, it doesn't come without costs, right? Some of the stuff, the share splitting doesn't come without costs. And what I mean by that is that some of the funds, they will devalue. I mean, I'm not an economist. I'm not although I was a finance major. I don't understand it as well as I should. This kind of split share, would impact Vladimir Potanin's, value as much as other folks. But Bill Curd, he was wondering, like, why would he kind of shoot himself in the foot just to get back at me? And there is a very interesting quote in the book. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it essentially goes as, a genie grants a Russian man any wish, whatever you want. And he's like, anything? He's like, yeah, you can have anything you want. But just keep in mind that whatever you wish for, your neighbor's going to get double. So then the Russian man goes, well, I want to lose an eye. And so the parable is basically the Russian man wants to lose an eye so his neighbor can lose both his eyes. And I guess that's kind of like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just basing this off of the book, but that was kind of the sentiment towards foreign investors and foreign folks, or kind of the mentality that some of these oligarchs had in doing business. It sounds pretty nuts. So what ensues is Bill's kind of like he basically wages war against Vladimir Potanin, as well as his company. So they try to execute by 3 parts. One, he wants to expose the issue to Vladimir Potanin's economic network, so a circle, just because, the way he positions it is, hey guys, today it's me, but tomorrow this Vladimir guy can do the same thing to you and your bottom dollar. The second part in his plan is making the story public, taking it to the press. And there were some individuals in the media in Russia who really wanted to leak something like this out. The third part of it is go straight to the chairman of the Russian Federal Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm not sure. His name is Dmitry Vasiliev. So give me 1 second. I think there might be somebody with like a... okay, cool. So the goal was to take it to the chairman. So, and with that, what ended up happening was Dmitry said, sure, I'll take a look. But Bill was very scared because the oligarchs had a grip around not just the economy, but around the politics as well. So even if Dmitry was sincere about investigating the share split, there was no certainty that he would, come out unscathed. Regardless, Dmitry said he would take a look into it, and overnight, Bill and his team of lawyers constructed kind of like a book, 100-page complaint around the share split. Dmitry signed off on it. He said, you're right. And the share split is, it's manipulative and not good for the economy. So he shut it down. It was a huge major win for Bill and a foreign investor. So now what ensued was Bill continuing to try and take on the oligarchs, but also growing his client portfolio, growing the investment portfolio for his clients. And there was this oligarch he took on another oligarch. But like I mentioned earlier, there's only so much you can push until some of the folks kind of push back. And so at a certain point, Bill was traveling to Russia. He was, not Russia. He was traveling to London. And the airport security stopped him, and they were like, you have to come with us. And so he didn't really think too much of it. He was a little confused as to why they would stop him, but they pulled him into a jail, kind of like a jail, like a holding. And at first he really didn't think too much of it. He thought, you know what? People are kind of messing with me. I'll be out here before you know it. So he quickly called his lawyer, and then after that he called someone from the UK embassy. And what ended up happening was they kept asking him, okay, all right, did he give you water? Have they fed you? And he'd say no. He'd call back in a couple hours, and they ask him again, have they given you water? Have they fed you? And it was unfortunately kind of like what the Russian authorities were doing was kind of like a scare tactic. They were locking him up in a very bleak cell, but not feeding him or not giving him any water, basically starving and starving him. Now, eventually he did get released, but after this, he basically took off Russia. He got on the Russian radar, and he decided, you know what, I probably have to go. So not only did he find himself having to uproot his family in Russia, but he had to go ahead and implore and urge his lawyers to leave, his people that worked for his office. All of them, he was like, we got to go. You can't stay in Russia. You got to come back to the UK, to London with me. And most of them did. So now, unfortunately, and this is where it's a big aspect of the book. It takes up about a third. One of his lawyers, I have his name right here. Bear with me. Let me see if I can dig it up. There we go. Sergei Magnitsky. So Sergei Magnitsky was a lawyer that helped him investigate kind of like some of the corruption that existed within the Russian economy and politics. And unfortunately, he did not want to take off. He thought to himself, well, why do I have to leave? I haven't done anything wrong. I believe in justice, and I want to stay. Unfortunately, over the next year after his arrest, he was tormented. He was, basically deprived of some necessities, some needs, food, water, but also he ended up getting sick, and he got sick from, I think, 3 things. I forget what they were, but none of them were tended. No one tended to him. He didn't get any opportunity to see his doctor. They even deprived his mother, his kids, a right to see him, to visitation rights. And some of the excuses for the denials were ridiculous. It was more like his kid. I think I remember one point, they wanted his son to visit him, and the authorities at the time were like, nope, he's too young. And that's it. There was no argument. There was nothing like that. Because he was a lawyer, Sergei, he filed complaint after complaint after complaint, but it all kind of fell on deaf ears. Now, unfortunately, Sergei passed away. He ended up being beaten to death. And after word got around to Bill basically, it's pretty wild. Bill really changed his tune. Not to say he was like neglectful or anything like that, but at that point, Bill was all about growing his business, growing his clientele base, growing his investment fund. At that point, he changed his tune where most of his emotional, mental energy went towards getting justice for Sergei. He went as far as going to the U.S. and asking him to help out, get justice for Sergei. And I will say this. I mean, you should take a read. You should really read this book. It's really, really good. I'm telling you, easy read, reads like a thriller. Bill, what he ended up doing was, through a law that he helped push, he was able to bar a lot of the folks that were mistreating Sergei from, one, investing into U.S. properties and investments, and two, preventing them from traveling to the U.S. Now you might think, well, it's not a big deal, but it's actually a pretty darn big deal, because the folks that harassed and abused and tormented Bill, they were actually folks that accrued a ton of wealth, living within Russia, living within that region the way they do. So they had a lot to invest in. So it affected them tremendously. Additionally, and I'm not sure if this is true, but the law also extended to their families. So it wasn't the tormentors directly that were affected, but their families were as well. So this definitely hit a nerve with the Russian government. So much so that the Russian government began to respond in a way where they would put out videos trying to discredit Bill and Sergei and whatnot. And at one point, it's kind of horrific. They would say it was Bill's at fault. Bill's should be tried for Sergei's murder. And you know what? In fact, there was a trial. Now, Bill was not going back to Russia. And two, Sergei was gone. He was dead. But Russia still put on basically trials. They put both Bill and Sergei on trial for stealing from the government. And the way they say it is, it's really incredible. Some of the stuff here is just insane. What Bill and Sergei uncovered, they ended up uncovering that their companies were hijacked. Their companies were stolen. You might think, well, how do you steal a company? But what they discovered was they basically raided the offices, took all the documentations, and they reassigned the owners to other individuals or something to that effect. And then they began to ask for tax credits. And they ended up stealing back, I think it was like $250 million worth of tax refunds from the Russian government. So they were stealing back from the Russian people. But at the time during Bill and Sergei's trial for the tax refunds, they were saying, well, Bill and Sergei were the ones stealing. So, I mean, it's just, it's a pretty wild story. I don't know a lot about the Russian economy. I don't know a lot about the Russian government. And this isn't a jab at them at all. It's just more of this is a good read. And I'll end it with that. You know what? Y'all should, if you really, it's a good read. Go ahead, take a listen, or read, I should say. Pick it up. I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised with this book. So now with that, I want to move on to my second segment, attending a cinematic event of a generation. And what I mean by that is I saw Dune 2. Plainly put. I saw Dune 2. I saw Dune 1 a couple of years ago when it came out. I think it might have been after my son was born. But I plopped myself down. I'm like, let me see if it's good or not. And it was pretty darn good. I was really impressed with Dune 1. I was very excited for Dune 2, and I hadn't watched it until about a month after it was released. And I was so excited. Everyone kept talking it up. Everyone was like, this is going to be it was just a phenomenal movie. One thing you don't want to miss out on. So I caught it, and it was good. I'm not going to lie. It was good. I really did enjoy it. But what I did not enjoy was middle of the film, I dropped my bucket of popcorn. It was horrific. A little bit more context. Right before I went off to watch the movie, I told my wife, "Baby, I'm gonna go ahead and get a bucket of popcorn, come back and share it with you and our son." And I bought a big bucket of popcorn just for that occasion. Halfway through the film, it just falls. I was so upset. I was having an evening, I was going to watch a movie, going to go watch the movies, going to get a drink, get an old fashioned from a local bar. And then I dropped the bucket and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get that drink anymore. I was so upset. The movie was pretty good. I'm not going to lie, but I was just so upset about the popcorn. The movie was pretty darn good. The acting was phenomenal. The graphics, the graphics CGI has come such a long way. It's insane. The practical effects as well. It was good. On top of the storyline. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Dune, and the Dune story and books. After that movie came out, I think, forgive me, after that movie after I watched the movie, I think that night I came home and I started doing some more research and reading about, the Dune series. It's pretty cool. It's like almost an opera. I like it a lot. It was pretty neat. I'm really excited to see what they do with the third movie based on, Dune 2. I'm not going to critique. It's not the movie's fault that, I dropped my bucket of popcorn. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not going to point fingers. I'm just going to say I was not happy. But yeah, it was a good time. I really enjoyed it. If you haven't watched it, definitely do yourself a favor. Watch Dune 1, then watch Dune 2. I didn't watch Dune. I didn't rewatch Dune 1 before Dune 2, so I was a little lost. It took me a little bit to catch up on. But overall, it's phenomenal. Beyond that, life has been going. Life has been, it just doesn't stop. Just been keeping busy at the shop. I've been keeping busy at my own business. Been still trying to stretch as much as possible. It's important. I've also been trying to meditate a little bit more. This episode, I really wanted to put it out a while ago. I just hadn't had a chance. So today. So, I do appreciate y'all, listening in. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. And my hope is I can talk to y'all really soon. If anything, feel free to reach out. I hope you all enjoyed it. Go catch Red Notice. Go catch Dune 2. If you haven't, which you probably should have already because it's already past tax season, do your taxes. Yes, you can't do that. You can't not miss taxes. They got Capone that way. All right. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.